What's up, everybody? Today I'm going to be doing a comparison of the two high-end laptops that I have experience using and which one I prefer. So we're going to be talking about two specific models. The first model is the Dell XPS 15. The exact one I had was the 9560 version of this. So I purchased that over a year ago for about $950 used, okay? I usually buy things used just because I like to be able to resell them and not instantly lose 40% of the value simply by opening the box, right? Granted, you do take a risk because if something goes wrong, you're less likely to be in warranty. So that's just my personal. I prefer to buy things used. Other people often prefer to buy them new, and that's fine, okay? But the other laptop we're looking at is the Thinkpad X1 Yoga, okay? And I will say, right off the bat, the ThinkPad is definitely much better for me as an individual, okay? It's important to understand I make YouTube videos regularly, almost every single day of my life. That is how I exist, all right? I'm also really mobile. I spend a lot of time moving around. So the first laptop I got was the Dell XPS 15. And the reasons I got this were, one, it had a small bevel, which I liked. I like having that little bevel. At least I thought I would like that. So the other reason was because it had a 4K display. Okay. So that's fancy. And also it had a decent graphics card. Ultimately, these were not good reasons for me to get a laptop. The reality is, a small bevel is just a completely superficial thing. When you're looking at a laptop screen, you don't really notice the edges because they're dark and they're not lit. You just see the edge of the screen you're looking at. The bevel does not matter at all in any way aside from superficialness, right? Which is fine if you're paying like $20 for it, but the reality is, with a Dell XPS 15, you're paying more than $20 for that small bevel. So it's not something that I think really matters that much. And it's actually detrimental for me as an individual because it changes the location of the webcam. This video, just for reference, is being recorded with everything that's built in to the Thinkpad X1 Yoga. So I'm using an internal microphone and an internal camera to record this video. I found with the XPS 15 that because of the weird, awkward camera angle, I had to make everything like this, and it was just a really awkward angle. And the XPS 15 had a better camera, but it was in a location that made me never use it. So it was like the camera didn't even exist. Then the microphone in the XPS 15 was not as good. I find that I'm able to record videos on this laptop, and I don't really need to worry about the microphone too much. Like, if I can't plug in my my Yeti, then it's not the end of the world. I can still make the video, and it's going to be fine. Whereas with the XPS, the microphone wasn't as good. It was more prone to jitteriness and that kind of thing. And again, this is from a YouTuber's perspective. So the next thing I want to talk about with why I kind of viewed getting the XPS 15 as kind of a mistake on my end is that I thought I needed a graphics card because I make YouTube videos, I do video editing, that kind of thing. I don't really edit my videos much, but I do occasionally. And I thought that a graphics card was important, right? I scoffed at the idea of not even having a graphics card. However, turns out I never used it. It was only useful when I was trying to play video games, and I don't really play video games on my computer anymore. I usually just work on my computer or browse the internet, right? And so what I found is I literally don't even need a graphics card. So with my first high-end laptop purchase, I was paying for a small bevel, a graphics card, and I didn't even need them. So now I feel much better about the ThinkPad because, one, I was able to get it used and still within warranty. So if anything happens, I can get it fixed for the next 2 years, even though I purchased it used. So they start at $1,400. The one I have starts at $1,600, and I got it for $1,000. So that instantly cut off 30-40% of the price, right? And the ThinkPad doesn't have or at least the one I have doesn't have a built-in graphics card, but it does have a really good processor. And the reality is, everything that I do is processor dependent. Like, even though I make YouTube videos, and you would think that you need a graphics card to, like, edit and work with YouTube videos, the reality is that you don't, because it's all processor dependent. Like, the part that uses the processor is when I make a video, right? So I'm going to mock make one real quick. We're just going to add a roll video here. And then if I click export here, and I do this, this is now using the processor. This is completely dependent on the processor's CPU speed. So the work that I'm doing, I thought was graphical because it's video, but that was actually just a misconception on my part. The reality is that it's CPU intensive work, and all that I actually need is a good CPU, okay? So one of the other reasons that I originally went with the XPS 15 is because it comes with 16 gigabytes of RAM and has the ability to be upgraded to 32 gigabytes of RAM, okay? Which is unusual because most of the time laptops can't get up to 32 gigs. However, again, I found that this was just something that I thought mattered when in reality it didn't. It's true there were times back in my bulk drop shipping days where I needed to work with hundreds and hundreds of tabs, and it was a little bit better to use a laptop with a bunch of RAM, but the reality was I was able to make it work with 16 gigabytes of RAM. I didn't need 32, and I never found that I wanted to spend the $150 necessary to get that second 16 gigabytes of RAM to have 32 gigabytes of RAM in the laptop. I just never found I never felt that that was a good use of my money, even though it was a little bit slower than working on my desktop, which had 20 something. No, get out, I'm recording. Sorry about that. The puppy waltzed in. Yeah, I just never found that the RAM upgrade really mattered that much. And so, essentially, I got the XPS 15 for the wrong reasons. Both of these laptops are really good laptops, but the XPS 15, I think it's better for business people who have a briefcase. They take better care of their things. They're not traveling a whole lot. They're not constantly moving around. Because my XPS 15 died about a year after purchasing it. However, that was purchasing it used, right? So this is actually 2 or 3 years. The motherboard ended up failing. This is most likely due to the fact that I was constantly moving around. It was in a backpack, there was vibrations, I was traveling a lot. And I was also in Nicaragua, where the temperature's higher, the humidity's higher. I was putting a lot of wear on the laptop, right? So again, it doesn't really make sense that I got an XPS 15, knowing that in mind. Considering how I travel, it makes sense that I have a durable laptop with a reputation for being durable, right? And ThinkPads are the most durable laptops you can get. There are reasons that astronauts and military people use ThinkPads because of their known and established durability, right? And so another thing with the XPS 15 was that it had a touchscreen, but it's not a 2-in-1, so it couldn't fold all the way around. Whereas this laptop, I can literally just fold it and make it a tablet. And I haven't learned to use this properly yet, but there are circumstances where I do use it. And it also the ThinkPad comes with a stylus as well. So whenever I try and do any kind of graphical design stuff or any kind of drawing, I have a basic Wacom stylus, and it's a pretty good stylus. It's not just some piece of plastic that sits in the housing. It has a battery, and there's multiple layers of touch sensitivity. So when you use it, it does feel more like an actual brush. You can adjust the thickness of the brush strokes just by kind of wiping with the, experimenting with the pressure that you're using, right? So I've had a really good time with the Yoga. And for me as an individual, it's a much better purchase. I ended up getting a smaller one, so I have the 14-inch Yoga, whereas I had a 15-inch Dell XPS, and it was big. And I found that I just didn't need it to be that big. I needed more flexibility to be able to move it around. And I can still multitask. Like, habitually, when I use a computer, this is what I do. Like, I, like, always do stuff like this because of my dropshipping days. I usually have, like something open on one side, and I use half the screen most of the time. And that's just a habit I picked up from dropshipping. And I assumed that I would need the kind of real estate space of a bigger laptop and the 4K display in order to do that, but the reality is that it didn't matter. I didn't use it. And that's another thing I want to talk about is the 4K display. So I was excited about the 4K display on the XPS 15 because it really does, it looks pretty. However, again, because I record so often, I wasn't actually able to run the laptop at 4K because that quadruples the size of video files. It makes everything run slower while recording. Recording is a kind of intensive process, and I can record a video. People are only going to be able to watch it at 1080p, basically, right? Like, yeah, some people could watch it at 4K, but you're talking about, like, a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of people. And the reality is, for the kinds of videos I do, you really just need to be able to read what's on the screen. You don't need to see every vivid detail. You don't need to see every single frame, right? So I just found that I wasn't even running the laptop at 4K. So I wasn't even using that. Like, it was a nice little gimmick thing. And then I found myself with a laptop where, one, it had a webcam that was just in a completely weird random place that made me not use it. Two, it had a 4K display that I never even ran at 4K because it screwed up my recordings. And three, the small bevel thing. But all that did was require that the webcam's in a weird place and that I don't use it. So, personally, I think the XPS 15 is a more, like gimmicky kind of purchase, whereas the Lenovo, the Yoga, is a much more, like, for me as an individual, a much better purchase. Lenovo's the ThinkPads are really, really, really reliable. It also, like, I know that it's kind of silly, but it's got multiple mouse options. So, like, there's times where I'm in a restricted area, like I'm on a bus seat or in a plane or something like that, right? And I can't move my elbows behind me to really work with a mouse, right? And even a mouse pad, you have to move your elbows further behind or away from the keyboard. And I found that little red nipple thing in the middle of ThinkPads is actually perfect for that situation because you can keep using the laptop without moving your elbows back too far. All you need to do is access the keyboard. You can still manipulate and control the mouse while your fingers are in home row position to be typing on the keyboard. So I find that it's just a more fluid experience, and the battery life is also much better on the ThinkPad. Like right now, I'm recording this with the ThinkPad unplugged, and I can finish this recording and it's going to be fine. With the Dell XPS, if I tried to record videos when it wasn't plugged in, I had problems with the processor. It would kind of mess up the encoding of the video I was recording. So I had to make sure that the laptop was always plugged in if I was recording a video, because the laptop was prone to getting a bit too hot or something, and then it would just corrupt the video mid-recording, so I would lose the entire video. Whereas on the ThinkPad, as long as it has power, and it's not literally dead, like the screen didn't turn off, then the videos that I record are fine, and I don't have these same problems. So again, I find that the ThinkPad is just the Yoga ThinkPad is just a much, much better option for me as an individual. I still haven't figured out how to use the tablet mode more often. This is something I need to learn because it's there, you know. And if you have a feature on your laptop that you don't use, essentially you paid for a gimmick. Like, unless you learn to use it properly, it's a gimmick, right? And I feel like the small bevel thing, like, that's literally just, there's not really much practical application to having a small bevel on your laptop. Like, I definitely liked it. I got used to it. It looked cool. But it took me like a week to get used to a regular laptop again. And I don't even notice now. Like, now that I'm talking about it, I can look at the edge of the screen and then look at the black part and then see the stuff behind the laptop. And I don't understand why you would pay to get rid of that when you could have, like, a longer battery life or be paying for something else, right? Essentially, anytime you drop $1,000 on a laptop, you're paying for specific features. So if multiple features of the laptop are things that you're not using, it's probably a much better laptop that you could get specific to you. So that's why ultimately I am much, much happier with my Thinkpad X1 Yoga than I was with my Dell XPS 15. But again, that could just be because of the way I live my life. I don't play video games on my laptop. I use my laptop to record very, very frequently, and I travel a lot. I move the laptop around constantly in a new place. So therefore, I think that the X1 Yoga is the best kind of best purchase that I've made in a while. I'm really, really, really happy with it. And it was actually my other laptop dying that led to me getting this one. So, food for thought, right? Alright guys, thanks for watching. See you next time. Ciao.